Thank you, Terry. It's an honor and a pleasure to be giving this lecture. You can see how much it means to me to come here. It's my daughter's birthday today. I only have one daughter, and she's very disappointed, but I said to her that it's important for economics that I should do it. So I hope I don't let myself down. And I remember Kozek very well from the London School of Economics, and I only recently discovered that he's one of the very first economists who mentioned well-being in his work, that he worked on well-being. Of course, now more and more, led by Richard Laird at BLSE and Andrew Oswald and all that, they talk a lot more about well-being. But in those days, no one did. They all thought that economics was just about the allocation of resources, and that's the end of it. But I would take a completely different view. What I'm going to talk about is only indirectly related to productivity, despite the introduction. And of course, Nick Crafts has been a big influence on me on the productivity, and especially on the time that it takes to adjust to new conditions. But people forget actually about it, but it's quite amazing. Like, I mean, you only need to look at Eastern Europe. They changed their economy and joined the European Union, and 33 years ago they started. And if you look at the data, they are still way behind, even Southern Europe. They haven't even caught up with Greece yet. I mean, except for Slovenia, actually. And it just shows how long it takes to adjust to these things, and that's always being sort of underlying my work, in fact, on these issues. Today, I will not talk very much about that because I understand we have about 40 minutes. I'm afraid, as usual, I prepare very wordy and longer slides that can be done in 40 minutes, but let me see how we get on. The main theme and how I get into it is that it is a project that is being funded by it's a three-year project that is being funded by the Nuffield Foundation at the Institute for the Future of Work, which I'm co-chairing, and we set it up about 5 years ago. And Nuffield insisted that my name should be there. I didn't want it to be there because I would be responsible for everything that is said in the final report. But they said, following on from the digital review on inequality, which they funded, they said they should fund the Pissarides review on the future of work and well-being. The more I get into it, actually, the more I start worrying about well-being, and I think we're not paying enough attention to well-being issues at work. And that's what I want to emphasize. But there is a long introduction before where I'm going to talk about automation technologies that are bringing many changes to labor markets. I'm going to say, what are these changes, how our work is being affected, and my focus will be Britain. I mean, our project is entirely in Britain, in fact, but the same thing applies to other industrial countries. And then we ask, can we improve this situation? And I'm going to say how we could do that. So I'm first going to talk about, it says economic policy objectives, but in fact, what it is more like that we should be thinking about well-being as well. I'm going to talk a little bit briefly, hopefully. In fact, I thought of removing that section 2 altogether, but there are one or two interesting things that I want to talk about robotics and AI, which are the new automation technologies that we're studying. Then how are they affecting jobs? And finally, on well-being issues. So let's begin with with policy. And what I really want to say there is the very opening bullet point, which is that policymakers are still obsessed with economic growth. They talk about, I guess, led by the city as well, actually. The city of London should be blamed. I mean, like if you say growth is going to be 0.5%, and then someone comes up with a new forecast that says, no, it will be 0.3. It's as if it's the end of the world. I guarantee you there's absolutely no difference between one and the other. I mean, when you talk about China level growth and Europe level growth, okay, maybe there is some difference, but the other issues, I wish they would just forget about it. There is lip service, I said, to well-being issues, which are becoming more and more important, but partly that's the fault of economists in that we haven't really come up with some very simple index to measure well-being, and that might be why it's not discussed very much on the today program as growth, for example. But hopefully one day we'll get there. I think when it comes to labor market policy, what we should be aiming for is a good labor market response to the new technologies. The new technologies are there. They are going to have a positive impact on productivity. They should be adopted, and there should be a good response to it, not undermine workers in doing so. We need to learn how to adapt quickly to these new technologies and take advantage of the higher productivity they're going to give us, and especially how to improve well-being and living standards of workers. Is this diagram I want to show you? I got this from the new book by Laird and Deneuve, in that the horizontal line is how many times the word GDP or GNP is mentioned in English language publications in recent years, and the steep line is how much happiness is mentioned. You can see that there's much more concern about happiness than about GNP, and that was done by Google Books Ngrams database, whatever that might be. But it's something covers lots of things. Now, what is well-being? Well, well-being, of course, it's been interpreted in many different ways. The sort of what we're trying to target is how does the worker feel about work when we talk about well-being at work? Are they happy with what they are doing? Are they stressed? Are they relaxed? You know, all these issues. Now, how do you measure it? There are some objective measures like stress and mental health, absenteeism, which are being used. And in fact, when Richard first started his work here, it was mainly about mental health. But more recently, people are moving in subjective measures because they've been shown to perform well. You know, these are responses to questionnaires of workers. You know, how do you feel about going to work, or about a type of time use surveys where they ask people what they're doing and how they're feeling about it. And that's a subjective measure. And then we can compare how they feel about going to work or how they feel about spending time at home with the family, going on holidays, and that kind of thing. And I think these are more encompassing, and I am in favor of following more subjective measures of well-being, because now there is a fairly good data set on subjective measures, and that's what we're using, in fact, at the IFOW when we're studying well-being issues. Now, we know that when there's new technology, those technology necessitates a transition of workers from one role, or you can think of role as a set of tasks using current terminology, to another. They might necessitate a job change, and in fact, what's attracted media attention most of all is how many jobs are we going to lose. Partly that's the fault of the original study by Prais and Osborne, who insist they didn't want it to be like that, but that's how people interpreted it, that we're going to lose half our jobs. I don't think we're going to lose many jobs. There will be some turnover of jobs, but very, very minor compared with what I call role turnover. Role turnover is basically you remain employed in the same company, but you do different things because your company is taking on a new technology, new capital. And that's what we are seeing in the market taking place. In fact, even at universities, look what kind of equipment we're working on now compared with 10 years ago and compared with 20 years ago. We had to learn new skills to do it. I mean, universities are very simple, short distance from one to the other. But in other jobs, it's a lot, and that's what. And now, why is there so much more fuss about automation technologies? We hear about AI or robotics all the time. I think the reason is that the technological disruption that is being brought there, and the skills that you have to learn, the new skills that you have to learn, are quite different from what you used to know. Whereas with most transitions, you know, if you look at the OECD data, for example, on job turnover, you will see that something like 20% of jobs get replaced every year. The average duration of a job in Britain is about 5 years. In the States, about 3.5 to 4 years. But those jobs are, you basically move from one job to another that is very similar in that 20% turnover. With these technologies, even if you don't change jobs and you have to transition within your company, you have to learn entirely new things because the new equipment that is coming along has AI in it or automation, and you have to learn how to use that. And that's what's bringing stress. That's what is worrying people most. We believe that there are things that companies can do ease the transition for their workers. And workers' attitude towards these new technologies matter. I mean, there are historical events famously that workers break the machines. We don't want machines want to carry on, or there are workers who say, how wonderful, I can work with these new machines and I'm going to be very happy. So, and that's what I want to come to at the end. Now, what do we know so far? What do we observe so far about automation technologies? And those are of two kinds. There are robots and AI. Robots are very easy in a way to measure and see what they can do because they're units. What the definition of a robot is that it's a machine that can move on its own, self-propelled, and do things. Before the 90s, robots were fixed on the floor and they were moving arms. Those are not counted nowadays as robots. They're counted as machines. The big innovation was when they could walk around the factory. They are employed almost entirely in manufacturing, and they do manual jobs. Handling is the most frequent activity, moving heavy things around, or welding, or they're also employed in warehouses, actually. Like a robot in warehouse is basically a platform of wheels that moves around this. And Amazon takes kids around to see the robots that work in their what they call their facility centers. Is that what they call it? And they always come out very disappointed because they would expect to see a humanoid taking boxes of Amazon and sending them to their addresses, where all they see is some boring old platform taking heavy boxes down. Now, who are the leaders there? Well, Korea, South Korea, Japan, Germany are the main industrial countries that use robots in their manufacturing. China is growing so fast that it's going to overtake them all very recently. In fact, the way we measure, they would count robots is through the International Federation of Robotics, who get all the data on new installations of robots. And they assume that the robot will live exactly 16 years, at which point it will die suddenly. So they have a cumulative measure, which is robots age 0 to 16. And that's what they call robots at work. And currently, China is installing more robots than the rest of the world put together. It's moving very fast up. And of course, the reason the Chinese are doing it is basically to increase their efficiency, and they throw workers out. The most famous case is Foxconn, that assembles iPhones and other smartphones. They used to employ 1 million workers, and then they've gradually been replacing the workers by robots, and now they're employing about 400,000 workers, and the rest is robots. But their objective is to go towards zero because they don't like having workers complaining about the hours they have to work. Now these are the 21 leading countries in installation of robots in their manufacturing. This is only manufacturing industry. Of course, you can see that Korea, Singapore, Japan. Singapore is mainly chips that they assemble, same as Hong Kong. I don't know how quickly you can read through these 21 countries, but you can see who the big absentee is, which is Britain. Britain is not even in the top 21 countries with automation in its manufacturing. It used to be there actually, but there are other countries like China, of course, which is the one moving fastest. But Southern Europe has overtaken Spain, Slovenia, Switzerland. It's not southern, but anyway, Slovakia, Czech Republic. Now, there are estimates of jobs at risk from robots. That's where Frey and Osborne started from and gave those extremely high numbers. Currently, it's believed about 10 to 15% until the manufacturing is completely robotized will be lost. But if you look at manufacturing employment, it's been falling worldwide and it's uncorrelated with robots. No one has managed to get good estimates of robots replacing workers in manufacturing. In fact, they're not. I strongly believe now that they're not. If you look at the countries with the most robot installations, they also experience the smallest employment reductions. What we see in manufacturing, if I confirm some self-advertising here, conforms with some work I did a few years ago with Rachel and Guy. And what we argued is something that shouldn't surprise anyone, that manufacturing has a higher productivity growth than the rest of the economy, irrespective of automation technologies. And when you have that and you are producing goods that there cannot be an infinite consumption of those goods, you're going to lose employment. Employment is moving on to services. That's what we are seeing in worldwide manufacturing. And then the countries that are installing the robots are getting more productive, more competitive internationally, and they export more, and therefore they maintain their employment. You can see this clearly here. I mean, the blue bars is the change in manufacturing employment over the period from 2000 to 2017. And the pink bars are the installations of robots that they have. And you can see that Germany, Japan, I mean, I've just taken 4 industrial countries of approximately the same structure. You can see Germany and Japan have had most robot installations and the least loss of jobs in manufacturing. Britain has had the smallest number of robots installed. I mean, you can see that it wasn't in the top 21 countries, and it's lost most people in manufacturing. And France is in the middle. So despite everything people say, now one thing you might say is that global manufacturing would lose jobs when it has robots, but, just because they do the manual work than that workers used to do. And it's very good, in fact, if they do, because those jobs were so boring in a way. It's hard work. They cannot be good jobs. But when you look at the industrial countries who are exporters, then those who install the robots will have the least loss in manufacturing jobs. So anyway, I've talked about this, so let's move on. That robots do increase productivity. What we show in another paper, of course, there's too much advertising, let's move quickly, was that the countries that benefit from the installation of automation technologies, might as well show you actually. the countries that benefit most from these technologies are the ones that score high on innovation capabilities. We use the World Economic Forum Index for capabilities, but it's correlated with the Global Innovation Index as well, and which are open and trade a lot. And when you control for the institutional structure, the innovation capabilities, and the openness, then you actually get an increase in employment in manufacturing when you install robots, because you export more rather than losing net. If you take Italy, that has very low innovation capabilities, then when they install robots to run their assembly lines in the car industry, they've lost a lot of workers in the car industry. And I did hear one of the head of Fiat, the late head of Fiat, actually talking about it, and he was saying that it's an objective of the company because their workers are so unionized and obnoxious that they cannot work with those workers. So they might as well get robots to do the work. And it shows in the data, if you look at it now. Then let's move to AI. Now with AI, it's a lot more difficult to measure AI, of course, because it's software. You never know what's going on inside the computers. And that's where, of course, all the risks from AI are. When you question firms, and we did it as well as part of our project, most, in fact, up to 80% say that they use some form of AI in their work, even now. But in fact, it's very, very simple applications that they use. Zoom, for example, for remote communication. They call it AI. I mean, I don't know if you can think of Zoom as AI. I think of it more like a telephone with video kind of thing. Even in the financial sector, that so much money is going into fintech, and we all think that we're being watched every movement we make with our credit cards and so on. But only about 5% of the actual work is controlled by AI. I don't know, the ATM machines, for example, have taken the jobs from cashiers, but those cashiers are still employed. They're doing other relationship banking. I don't think you can call that jobs taken over by AI. The ATM machines are not AI really. I mean, they don't use face recognition or anything like that. So as yet, everything that is being said about AI is really about the future, and it's all speculation. There is nothing there basically. What we could say, if you look at and a lot of work has been done. In fact, I've used the McKinsey Global Institute work on this as well. Is the enablers for AI. You know, if AI becomes more usable in the economy, which countries have the institutional structure ready to take best advantage of those, which includes, is the second bullet point, includes the digital infrastructure, innovation capabilities, well-trained human capital, openness to interaction with other similar countries, quality of labor force institutions, and good social support for the transition of workers. And then the answer is obviously US and China are the best prepared, except for social support, which they don't provide, of course. But in terms of the technical requirements, they're the best prepared. And then they are followed by Germany, Japan, South Korea, same as the robotic countries. Britain actually is in the second category of below those three countries that I've listed there. But so far, Britain has been very good at pushing the frontier, the scientific frontier on AI, but not applying it to its industry. In fact, the most notable AI person, of course, which Jeff Hinton has gone and to work for at the University of Toronto in the Google. Now not in Google, of course, but he did. Okay, now. What's the replacement? Now there are many tasks, of course, that would become obsolete with both robots and AI, but humans can multitask. I believe that what we've been observing, which is something that I had a long discussion with Nick Krafts about it, actually, concerning his last paper, probably, that was published, that was Keynes wrong? I'm not sure. Is he asking, was Keynes right or was Keynes wrong? That he presented at the British Academy, that he was making the point that Keynes had a point that we're going to lose jobs, and I was saying that no, we're not going to lose jobs. But we had an interesting discussion about it. I believe that we're not going to have any problems with jobs, despite the fact that with ChatGPT, many people said, that's it, you know, we found an AI technology that's definitely going to take jobs from people. I believe that that's true. It will take jobs when it's no longer hallucinating. But there will be other jobs that will be created. And the jobs that will take, I'm not sure actually if you can call them boring. I mean, like work at Stanford AI, which is probably the best place actually that is doing research on AI and implications for jobs now. It's led by Eric Johnson. He said that it will affect all jobs except for the very top ones. You see, that's basically because basically what ChatGPT can do is to write reports. And there are many junior lawyers, paralegals, civil servants, and it can also do very good programming. It can use Python very well. All those jobs would be substituted, and there will be implications. There will be implications for the professions actually. You know, like now, you know, how do you get senior lawyers appointed? By starting low down and preparing cases for their bosses until they become the bosses themselves. Now, if you lose the vast majority of those junior posts that do the reporting, then the legal profession has to find another way of appointing senior lawyers, which is not easy given how traditional they are and how difficult they are in changing their ways. And the same goes for civil servants. I mean, like, we should have a much leaner civil service with a ChatGPT that you can rely on. And I think that's coming because a lot of junior civil servants just write reports for their heads of department. And those reports you just write in a couple of minutes. I've tried it actually. I've tried it on I asked you, in fact, I don't know if Paul tried it, but I tried on monetary policy. I said monetary. Exactly. Yes, exactly. No, I said, no, I asked what's monetary policy supervision, and within less than 2 minutes, he came up with a nice essay that if it was written by an A-level student, I would have given top marks. By a first-year economics student, I'd get to see maybe a 60%. By a master student, fail. Because, in other words, it described very, very clearly the basics of monetary policy supervision. Now, pretending that I know about monetary supervision now. The reason I did it was to see if there was anything new, but then I discovered nothing had changed since the days that I did monetary economics at the LSE. And it's coming. Now, will there be a job shortage? Well, of course, famously, Keynes and Leontief both said, yes, we have to work much less. I don't believe that's the case unless we really want to. Elon Musk actually very recently, Bletchley said that this AI is so powerful that we were going to have a world without work, to which Sunak objected. But if you listen carefully to what he said, though, it's not that there will be no work to do. He said we will not need to work if we don't, because everything that we will need to do could be done by the machines. Of course, the big question there is the distribution of earnings. You know, who is going to get money if machines do everything, which he did not care to him, I guess. I mean, like people very frequently ask, you know, but where are the jobs going to come from? The point is that we never know, and that's what led Keynes and Leontief make the remarks that they did. You see, to take Keynes as an example, when he was writing, 40% of jobs were in manufacturing. And then there was a bit of agriculture as well, though not much. And there were the service industries that today are so big and they employ most people did not exist. You know, what was hospitality at the time of Keynes? There was the cafe in Piccadilly that he used to go with his friends. What was it called? It's a very famous one if you read his biography. Yeah, that they were going. It's still there, of course. Travel didn't exist, and now it's a point, and now it's employing so many people. You couldn't imagine in 1930. He couldn't imagine that in 100 years from that time, travel and hospitality would employ so many people. And I mean, Leontief actually has less of an excuse because he was talking in 1983. The person who got it right, actually, basically, if it's going to happen, was William Beaumont in 1967, which was the paper that motivated me to write the 2007 paper. That he said we're going to lose industrial employment. Eventually, we might lose service employment, except for the creative industry. So all human labor will be employed in the arts and be very creative, which is closer, I think, to what we're seeing, because one thing that AI will not replace will be creative art. But the last time I said that, someone played me a piece of music and said, "Do you recognize this singer?" And it was so good. And I said, "No, who is it? Who is it?" You know, and they said, "Oh, it's machine generated." But I still have to wait to see the Mona Lisa being painted by a machine, or the Parthenon marbles being done by a machine.
That's the solution.
Exactly. Not the Elgin marbles, but they were. Interesting. This is an aside, but I don't know if you noticed that the BBC, the first time they reported it last week when the Greek Prime Minister was here, he said the Parthenon marbles or as they are more widely known, the Elgin marbles. The second time they said the Elgin marbles, or as they are more widely known, the Parthenon marbles. I thought it was interesting. Someone must have complained. Anyway, what I think we should be doing is not look at what jobs are going to come from, but what skills we're going to need for the future because of this role change. And that's what we're doing, in fact, our project as well. This list here I got from the Manpower Group, from the McKinsey Global Institute, independently came up with the same skills, but there's also the skills imperative, that's another NAFI-funded project, came up with the similar ones. And it's basically the technical ones it's all about IT skills and data processing. We've got millions of online adverts collected by Azuna that we analyze, and the fastest growing technical skill that is needed is data processing, data analytics, operations and logistics, and engineers to look after the machines. The most common skills measured by 80% of jobs or more is ability to communicate with supervisors, peers, or subordinates, reliability and self-discipline, creativity, critical thinking, leadership, and managing others, advanced communication and negotiation skills, which have always been, they were the same in the past as well. So learn maths, learn data processing, but learn how to behave with how does that work, and you have no problem, you're going to get a job. Now, attitudes to technology by workers, that's the main thing that I want to put them, but we have 10 minutes to spend on this. Now, it's clear from what I said, because especially from AI, that we don't know, that there are uncertainties at work. Although I'm saying there will be jobs, you don't really know where the jobs are going to be. You know the skills, but you don't know, what do you do? Well, my view about responding here is learn a general skill. Don't specialize at school, and specialize at work, which tells you that the A levels are no good anymore. Just doing 3 subjects or 4. Baccalaureate is better, but some general education, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, interestingly, given what those skills are, the best things to learn when you're doing your general skill is really maths and English, or language, whatever your language might be. Once you die, maths will be top group and English for the second. You know how to talk and how to communicate well. Now, how do employers and workers feel about it? We have a lot of surveys of workers' attitudes to work. They were called happiness surveys before, now they're called well-being surveys, I guess. And there are various paradoxes there which could be corrected, actually, that concern working well-being. For example, losing your job is one of the life events that gives most unhappiness. The life events that give most unhappiness is illness or death in the family, losing your job, and for some people, divorce. For others, divorce is a happy event. At least for my friends. But the future sometimes is being one of the events that give most unhappiness. On the other hand, being at work in sort of time use surveys is one of the activities that gives most stress and dissatisfaction, especially some things of being at work, which is commuting. People hate commuting. And people hate seeing their boss. On the one hand, if you lose your job, you're desperate. If you're at work, you don't like it. If your boss asks to see you, it's the unhappiness moment at work. Maybe you fear that if your boss is going to see you, it's going to tell you that you're fired or something. And it shows, and that's interesting, actually. Remember that when I come back in a minute to tell you about good work. And in fact, there is a list of activities, something like, 10, 15 activities that they ask people how they feel when they're doing them. And the worst of all is when you are sick in bed. The second worst is being at work, that they list. And then you have, spending time with friends, watching sports, watching TV, playing with kids, and then goes up and up. And it's a family audience, so I'm not going to tell you what's number 1.
So you end up with a family.
Sometimes it says, I would rather not say. Now, of course, you might say, and it's interesting that the recent textbook actually discusses this a lot. I mean, isn't that what you would expect as an economist afterwards, to spend so much time talking about work-leisure trade-off, and work gives you unhappiness and it's only income that compensates, whereas leisure gives you happiness? The answer is yes, but then when you ask people about income, if the reason that people were unhappy at work was the work-leisure trade-off, as we analyze it, then when you ask people what will make you happier, they should say more money. After all, that's what the trade-off goes. But in fact, money doesn't feature in the top 5. I think it comes as number 5. The first one, people say that I would be happy at work if I have better communication with my manager. There is more transparency of what the company is doing, so they inform the workers about what they're doing. There are better social relations at work. We have lunch together, or we have coffee together, there's not split there. And importantly, actually, I have more time flexibility to pursue life outside work flexibly, rather than forced to be at certain times. And these are the features that we don't see very much. We see very little, in fact, here, especially in Britain here at work. And that's what people are saying in surveys that they would like to see, to push spending time at work higher. Professional people feel better about their work than non-professional in the professions. And the professionals have more of this. They are the managers. They have better, they know more about what's going on in their company. If you're a lawyer or accountant, and the professors actually score highest in terms of satisfaction at work, and so on. And yet they still work. They don't say, they still have this trade-off of work and leisure. So there's no doubt that we could improve the well-being of workers if we pay more attention to those things that they say that they like. Now, you might say, why should an employer or a government care as long as they can force the worker to work? Well, the answer is that if you give better quality work, then you will get higher productivity. There is a paper, a very recent paper by Deneuve, the latest co-author on the book, Carlton and Watts, where they interview people and they show that it happens. A little book from the Royal Society of Arts that you're a contributor by Haldane, Andy Haldane, yeah, that Tara contributed, and in that book, interestingly, there was a short article by a CBI person, and he said, "Of course, we know what's good work, and of course, we know that it will improve productivity, but we don't know how to apply it." He said, how? In other words, if what you want to achieve is better communication with managers, they don't know it. On behalf of the managers, he was saying, we don't know how to do it. More transparency, better social relations, especially social relations, actually, is the one that causes most difficulty. Then there is a lot of ECG concern. I'm not sure if ECG is attracting as much interest from investors as it used to, actually. There was one time when it went up, but I think now it's going down. But basically what I'm saying is the S and the G in the ECG. And then why should government care when it's formulating policy? Well, you should care because that's what citizens care about. I mean, if we're a democracy, if government is going to look after us, they should be looking at how we feel at work. Now, how do workers feel about automation? About this new automation that is coming on? Having said that, well, in fact, what we're finding in our work is that well-being is worse when there is a higher chance of automation in your job. We use the Frey Osborne measure of automation, of new technologies and correlated with what workers said about their feelings at work. And it is worse if you're working in jobs that are more at risk of automation. There is also the European Union survey with ZDF. Unfortunately, Britain is refusing to collaborate now with ZDF, so they are not part of it. But again, they're showing that workers are much more worried about losing their jobs than what the capabilities of technologies are now. We also found evidence. Hayton et al. Is our work. It's James Hayton who is in charge of the survey of managers from the Warwick Business School, but MGI also has a survey on that. That we found that workers who care more about subjective feelings of their workers at work, they are more likely to adopt the new technologies. So you have workers worrying about the new technologies when they think there is a high probability that they'll be taken over. And yet, the companies that are more likely to adopt those are the ones that keep their workers informed, give them training. MGI found that these companies have to have offer at least 75 hours a year in training. So about an hour and a half per week that the worker does on their own in the intranet of the company. And those are more likely to adopt the automation technology. So you have this irony that if you offer good quality work, then you're more likely to adopt it and the worker is not worried. If you don't tell the worker anything, workers sit there in a state of panic that there might be automation technologies coming. And if your boss asks to see you, that's it, that's the end. In other words, when we interviewed workers about generally more general than automation technologies. In fact, it may be not surprising, but they claim that if they are given laptops to do work or tablets, smartphones, real-time messaging tools, and so on, they feel better. It improves the quality of life at work, which is not surprising. It's not technologies that will replace you, but when it comes to AI and surveillance equipment, if you are in China and you see cameras all around the room, then they worry. The anxieties increase. It's not surprising, but it's good to see it in a survey. Like give equipment to their workers, but give equipment that helps them in their work, that rather than ones that are going to take work over from them. There are many other features of good work that we have, dignity, work stability, fair pay, diversity, and so on. The one that is high is social interaction and time flexibility. I don't know if now communication, we talked about it a lot actually, is the idea I cannot think for too long away from matching workers to jobs. One way of seeing the better communication is that leave some initiative to the worker or what role the worker takes within the company. And that's because workers know their skills much better than anyone else. There are some specific skills to the worker. And if the worker has an option of what role to have in the company and suggest it to their line manager and move on, then obviously they choose something that will give a better match to their abilities and therefore higher productivity through improving the quality of the match. That's how I see the community, why companies should pursue communication better. Autonomy and so forth, that's more of what I've been saying. Now, what about hours of work? Here it's what workers want is flexibility. Yeah, what workers want is flexibility in hours rather than working fewer hours. Although there is some tendency to work fewer hours as well, as you get a higher productivity, a higher standard of living. But that's voluntary. It's not because there is no work. Germans, Dutch, and Danish work much less than other Europeans, and especially much less than Southern Europe, than the Greeks and the Italians, because they're more productive and they get the money and then they buy more leisure. But other than that, it's flexibility. And this I've taken from the American Psychological Association, but it's very similar to what we're finding. that said, if you are going to apply for a future job, what's going to impress you most about your future employer? And then he said, how employers respond to mental health is an important consideration. 81% said yes. Flexible working hours, workplace culture that respects time off. If you say, I've got a kid at home, it's not very well, can I go home? And the employer says, of course, go and you can do your work another time. The ability to work remotely, and the 4-day week, interestingly. There's strong support even in the States for a 4-day week, as much as there is for remote work. And I think that's the way that you choose. If you give workers choice, if you look at this and you give workers choice how to spend their leisure, then most of them will want to take it as a longer weekend rather than 1 hour less during the week, for example. Unless I always think, one of my former students wrote a book and supervised some pilot studies, that's Pedro Gomez. And I always keep telling him that it's going to be problems with education and people with young kids in school. But he said, no, you can do school in 4 days a week as well. I think that's probably not a very comforting thought, actually. If I thought my kids would only get out of the house 4 days a week. 5 minutes too little, and then let them to play football on Saturday to get out of and that's it. There are studies. The response of the pilot studies of 4-day week. They said Tyler Grange was one company that responded in Oxford. Said it improved health, finances, and relationships. It simply makes you happy, which is a nice way of describing it. And I think that's the end. That automations are being implemented, not very successfully. There's no evidence that we're going to lose our jobs, but there's evidence that we need to adapt our skills to the new technologies, and that's not an easy task. And we can improve well-being, but we need companies and government to take action in that direction.